I have an Apple product that Apple won't sell you. And I have a lot of Apple products. I have the M2 Mac Mini. I have an iPhone 17 Pro. I have an iPhone 14. I have AirPods. I have the watch. I even have the Magic Mouse, which I did replace with the MX Master 4. Check out my other video. But there's one product that I don't like from Apple, and I had to solve this problem. I hate their keyboards. They're just not good. So I decided that I would use my own keyboard, but that made a problem. I don't have Touch ID. Or do I? This is what Apple will not sell you. CJ, we saw the Apple Watch. Why the hell do you need a Touch ID button? Admittedly, it's a first world problem. When Apple first announced the Unlock My Mac with Apple Watch function, I really liked it. And then I started to dive into iCloud Keychain. So I ditched Dashlane and let Apple handle all my passwords and two-factor authentication processes, which I have to do a lot. And that part is just not great with an Apple Watch. Nothing's worse than being in the middle of typing something, logging in, having to wait then for your watch to vibrate, double tap the side button 2 times, and then hope that that connection goes to your Mac and authenticates you. It works a lot, but it doesn't work all the time and it's not perfect. So a Touch ID button is a lot easier. You can just be in the middle of typing, get the prompt to enter your password, or even generate a 2FA code and tap it and boom, you're in. Touch ID works a lot better with iCloud Keychain than a Apple Watch does. So we're back to the initial problem. I don't want an Apple keyboard, but I want Touch ID. Thankfully, I watched Snazzy Lab's video a few years back where he actually talked about this process and kind of guided you through it. It was incredible to watch, and this did bring up one problem. You do need an Apple keyboard in order to make this happen. So I'm either buying a new one and wasting it, or I'm buying a used one. Thankfully, I had a friend who was able to sell me one for a relatively inexpensive cost, and I was able to harvest the button, and that is where I got this guy. Now, as you may notice, that is different than the one I showed at the beginning of the video. Yeah, we'll get into that. To say this process is not straightforward at all is an understatement of the century. Let me give you the very short story, because if you want the long story, you should just go check out Snazzy Lab's video about it. The TLDR is that the Touch ID button and the logic board are paired together, so you can't just hodgepodge this or try to find these parts online separately and put them together. They're serialized and they have to be a pair. I did find an online retailer that sells just the logic board and the Touch ID button for about $60, so if you're interested in this, I would highly recommend looking into your options. So, with my buddy's old Magic keyboard, I went ahead and fired up the 3D printer, printed out the enclosure, and got to work. And then realized that this is a little difficult. There are really tiny components. There are ribbon cables that you have to remove that you have to be very careful with. And I didn't have the iFixit tweezer set at the time, and I would recommend getting that. So did I botch my first attempt at this and have a wonderful paperweight sitting on my desk with a black button that matches the black case for it? Yeah, I thought I did, but I actually didn't. What ended up being the problem is a simple ribbon cable became very loose, and I thought, I messed this up. Now, the other part is I wasn't like Snazzy Labs and other creators who put a lot of thought and quality into putting their thing together, and I used a little super glue. And if you know anything about 3D printing, putting super glue on PLA leaves this white hue on it. And I thought that I had corroded it and caused a static electric shock to kill the button. So what did I do? Found myself another Apple keyboard. Now this one was a USB-C connector. The previous one was Lightning. And let's face it, it's 2026. Who still wants Lightning in our life? And I was able to harvest that one, make this wireless, and use this one as my dedicated Touch ID button. This has fundamentally changed the way I use my computer. I do not use the Apple Watch to unlock my Mac. I just go ahead and use the Touch ID button. I have noticed that it has made my Apple Watch last just a little bit longer because it's not looking for a Mac to unlock all the time. So, hey, that's a small bonus. And just in my normal everyday workflow, this is much quicker than using the Apple Watch. This is not a project for the faint of heart. This is definitely something that if you feel like you're ready to tinker and, God forbid, waste at least $60 all the way up to $200, then I would recommend taking this project on. But Apple should just sell this thing. I don't understand it. You could charge me $100 and I would buy this Touch ID button rather than buying the whole keyboard. You could make bank off of this. Why doesn't Apple just do this? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't work at Apple, but they really just don't want to sell this to you. I'm sure there's people who are going to talk about the security and all of that stuff. And honestly, it really thinks it's a keyboard. Seriously, come check this out. Here we are on my Mac, and what you'll notice is that I have the Touch ID button connected, but if you actually look at the settings here, it thinks it's a full-blown keyboard. It doesn't think it's just a Touch ID sensor. Now, I named it that way, so that way I know which one I'm using, but it thinks it's a full-blown keyboard. You gotta be honest, macOS is pretty smart when it comes to doing that, and the fact that it behaves that way is pretty interesting. Alright. You may have noticed that I have a really long box, and Snazzy Labs has a very small box. Well, this was before I was a content creator, and I wanted to actually try the Magic Keyboard. So with my buddy's keyboard, I bought the extended one with a number pad, because that's important to me. I use that a lot. Nope, really didn't like that. But the one that has the full keyboard with the number pad has a longer logic board than the short one. So if you're looking for something small and tidy that doesn't take a huge footprint up on your desk, go for the one without the extended keyboard on it. This is the fun stuff about technology. This is the fun stuff about tinkering. I had a problem, I watched somebody else do it, I hemmed and hawed for about 3 years, and then finally pulled the trigger to do it. I wish Apple would sell this product, but I also learned a lot by doing this. Learned a lot by really messing up, which is the best way to learn, by mistakes. So if Apple starts selling this, I don't know if I would immediately go out and buy the Apple version. My little 3D printed box is just fun enough for me that I want to keep it. But I'm curious if that's something that you would take on, or if you want to see the inside of this thing, because it's a little, janky, to say the least. So have some fun. If this is something that you want to do, I highly recommend you check out the Snazzy Labs video, as well as this page here on GitHub that kind of goes through the step-by-step breakdown for it. Pro tip, I use my 3D printer's hotbed as the way to loosen the adhesive on the keyboard. So if you're a 3D printer, that may be a really nice way to get this involved with your project 2 times. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, or to steal Snazzy Labs thing, that other one works too. And tell me what other videos you would like to see.